So, good evening, everyone. I guess it's already evening, and thank you for joining us for this panel 5, which basically we are going to talk about supply chain planning, which is the backbone of the efficient operations. So before I get into that, I wanted to introduce my panel. So it's a great honor to be moderating this panel with distinguished and esteemed panelists. To start with, I'll talk about Yogesh Sarin, the first panelist to the left of me. He's responsible for the aftermarket service supply chain for South Asia. So, and he's currently working at Dell. And in his role, he handles the critical spare parts management and service logistics, where customer satisfaction and quick response times are the key. His insights into handling complex service supply chains is a technology-driven environment will be invaluable for our discussion today. Welcome, Yogesh. And to the left of Yogesh is Mr. Gaurav Arora. Yeah. He's currently the Associate Vice President of Sourcing and Procurement at Medreich Limited. And he leads the planning and execution of sourcing strategies for both direct and indirect spending, managing an annual spend of almost like 1250 crores, which includes negotiation and relationship building with suppliers. His work is instrumental in aligning sourcing with Medreich's financial objectives. Welcome, Mr. Gaurav. So we have the last panel, Mr. Girish KK. He is the head of logistics for the fashion and retail division at Reliance Retail Ventures Limited. And he oversees the logistics operations in a rapidly changing industry where trends evolve very quickly, requiring agile and responsive supply chain strategies to ensure products reaches customers seamlessly. Welcome, Girish, once again. When we talk about supply chain planning, it's not only about moving goods from point A to point B. So it also includes, it is a comprehensive process where we ensure there is a right balance of demand, supply, and resources equally, so that we also navigate the risks and minimize costs and maximize the customer satisfaction. So when I talk about the challenges, when we talk about supply chain planning, we encounter a lot of challenges in our day-to-day work. To talk about my work as a head of S&OP at United Breweries, which is a part of Enikon currently. So we are setting up the process of planning recently. Like we have onward onto the journey of setting up a planning process. Before that, it was just an order coming from the government agency, and then we supply according to the orders. And there were a lot of wastages which go accordingly. So that's what, then we realized the importance of an S&OP process, and we started implementing them. So some of the challenges during this process which we encountered was, of course, the right forecast accuracy or the demand forecasting method that will be used for each of the industry. And the second one is balancing. Of course, some of the panelists were discussing about balancing the cost effectiveness and also the service or the responsive levels. And the next challenge that we wanted to look at was the usual supply chain disruptions. In this VUCA world, of course, this disruption should be a part of the planning, and we need to ensure that our inventory or the service levels take care of these particular disruptions into the consideration. And also, last but not the least, is about the effective cross-functional collaboration. It is not that just the supply chain is alone, and it has to ensure the availability of the product at the right place, in the right time, and right quantity, and in right quality. It requires the support from marketing, the sales, the finance, and the R&D departments. And of course, not to forget about the sustainability and the regulatory compliances which some of the industries face. And in this, in this recent trend of ensuring that the supply chains has to be sustainable, and also they are in compliance with the regulations of the government. This is very critical. So this all factors needs to be considered and during our supply chain planning, and so that we are able to fulfill whatever the customer demands. So getting on to the discussion today. So the first, when I was talking about the cross-functional collaboration supply chain planning, so I would ask Girish, in successful supply chain planning often involves collaboration across various functions, right? So how do you foster effective communication and collaboration between the different functions like supply chain, procurement, finance, and other departments?
See, Srinath, first, thank you, Celerity, for this opportunity, and thanks for the audience. Before I answer this question, I think, at least from a Reliance perspective, I need to set the context, okay? As we speak, Reliance sells about 7 lakh units of apparel a day, on an average, okay? And we talk about 2.5 to 3 crore units of merchandise that's coming in from vendors to our warehouses, and also equal amount of stocks that is being in transit from our warehouses to our stores. So needless to say, the complexity is very high. Okay, that's point number one. And second is the shift in the pattern of thought. Earlier, maybe about a year back, if I were to say that I'm doing my supply chain at the lowest cost and at an average of 4 or 5 days in terms of transit time, it used to be considered as workable or good. Means the logic was lowest cost at a manageable time. Currently, the pattern has changed, and the requirement is as fast as possible. Like we have, many panelists have discussed it in the previous, meetings as well. So requirements are pretty stringent nowadays. Just to give a perspective, if I were to send a stock from Bangalore to Hyderabad, people always compare it with the transit time of a bus, which takes about, say, 14 or 15 hours to reach, and then ask us, why can't I deliver the same stock in terms of logistics in 14 hours? Worst case, the next day. Okay, so that's the complexity that we're talking about. Now, coming into planning, needless to say, with these kind of complexities, you need to have a very robust system in terms of integrating or collaborating with multiple, stakeholders. Like, say, it could be the planning team, it could be the sourcing team, it could be the logistics and warehousing team, the express partners whom we work with. So it's a big exercise in all. There are 2 bits of it. One has to be the system or the tech capability that needs to be there. Like say, if you talk about Reliance, you have a complete PLM, product lifecycle management. You have a fabric sourcing tool. You have got a vendor management tool. You have got a vendor PO management. Then you have got the carrier engine, which integrates the vendor with the transporter, and then obviously the transporter itself. So this itself has to be completely integrated in a robust way through a proper APIs so that there is seamless flow of data. That's point number one. Second, there are 2 points to it. One, when you talk about the plan, earlier you take an annual operating plan and then you average out your requirement per day. And say, okay, I have to process so much of units. I told I am processing, say, 2.5 crore units in a month. But that could go up to 4 crores in a peak season, right? So I cannot take a straight line average, which means with the growing demand or the reduction in demand, I have to plan my supply chain efficiency also accordingly. So one is the overall annual operating plan. Second is also to know the requirement from a day-to-day basis, keep updated of what sales is happening in the stores, in retail, what is the kind of replenishment that is going to happen. So these all requires a lot of collaboration, and I think it has to happen in a very robust way.
I totally agree with that, Girish. So thanks for illustrating so clearly. And of course, like you also have explained about the importance of technology and usage of different technological tools to ensure that this cross collaboration happens. And coming to Mr. Yogesh. So you come from an aftermarket services industry, right? So where customer satisfaction is of paramount, of high importance. How do you tackle the unique supply chain challenges in South Asia, particularly regarding the responsiveness and also the spare parts availability?
Yeah, thanks first of all for having me here. So now, little bit brief on what aftermarket services is, and it's got an element of reverse logistics, but not just that. First of all, what happens is that you sell a product, and along with it, you sell a commitment, a promise that you want to serve it for its warranty period. And that's really a big promise to make. And more than that is a promise to keep. And to keep that promise, you need to not fail each time, every time, at least till the time you promised or till the time you are warranted to have that effective. Now, to make that happen, have to have your network of supply chain in terms of your spare parts availability and capability to cater to the times that you have promised for. Now, these times may again a little specific to the industry, may vary from a consumer who may need next day is okay for me to have my product serviced, or a stock exchange which may need within next 2 hours because they have a backup for maybe 4 to 6 hours, or well, some of you may know stock exchanges work on our servers. And there may be hospitals which have records which again cannot go void at any point of time. So there are customers who may need a 2-hour, 4-hour, 6-hour SLA, or customers who may need next business day or a 2-4. So depending on all that you have sold as promise or those warranties, you need to have your stocking, you need to have your network designed to make sure that it caters to the kind of term that is usually used as active service units. Units active in various zip codes or pin codes that need to be serviced. Now to do that, your network, your inventory levels, your logistic turnaround of transport that's needed to cater to those zip codes, and your risk management in terms of compliance and permits and stuff. GST relieved a lot in India, but talking about South Asia, there are still things that happen across the globe. And with some of you may know, and some of you would know in times to come with new administration happening in US, there might be still few countries which will have challenges to import and export. And then we move a lot of GPUs, or if you know a company called NVIDIA, these are super costly stuff, ranging a small shipment, maybe $1 million plus kind, and there they may need special logistics. Not needless to say. So it goes on and on in terms of complexity, but the bottom line is that you need to keep evolving in terms of your design to make sure that you're just keeping your.
Thanks, Yogesh. So, of course, like that gives us insight into the after-service market, aftermarket services, absolutely. Moving on to Gaurav, like with the responsibility of sourcing for both a direct and indirect spend, how do you balance cost efficiency while managing quality and supply relationships? Because you are already managing a portfolio of almost like 1250 crores annually. That's a huge lot. So how do you manage this balance between cost efficiency and maintaining quality?
Yeah, thank you, Srinath. Good evening, everyone. Being a pharmaceutical industry, we have a different compliances requirement, as you said, which needs to be fulfilled according to the territories where you do the business. Most of us, Medreich is concerned, we are into the Europe territory range, more prominently UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and all those territories. So all of our life-saving drugs should comply the basic parameters and quality requirements under regulatory requirements from those territories as well. So one is quality, where we cannot compromise, even though irrespective of if we get anything cost effective or maybe cheaper or economical. Second is the expectations from the strategic point of view. We have to build year-on-year risk mitigations on all those plans where we can focus on the business continuity. So direct spend is always a kind of focus area for any kind of pharmaceutical industry, where we need to very cautious about quality as well as the cost, because their money comes from. And most of your 80% spend is from your direct material. And those are the direct ingredients which goes into the medicine. So cost is also important, and vice versa, the quality is also equally important. Now coming back to the overheads, when we say about the production and manufacturing overheads about the medicine are quite higher than compared to any other commodity or FMCG products. Because building the infrastructure which is required to be fulfilled and qualified by those agencies, regulatory agencies of Europe or US or more, those territories, you need to spend a lot of capex, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of maintenance, which needs to be maintained in terms of high performing infrastructure. Once you already done the costing and overheads fixed, your only cost saving and your only year-on-year objectives are just to reduce cost from the direct spend. Since indirect spend is not that much contributor to the COGS, you have to work on the alternate vendor developments. You have to work on long-term rate contracts. You have to work on the negotiation in terms of bulk volume. You have to accumulate more territories, more business to the raw material supplier so that they can get the more business. Vice versa, there is a contract manufacturing which we focus how we reduce the cost is in terms of doing just buying as a spot buying. We do the contract manufacturing in terms of giving them business assurance so that they can have a yearly business assurance and we will get the objective in terms of cost savings. So those are the area where we focus in terms of direct material. Indirect material, which includes all your maintenance and including the IT spend, where we look for the better yield or better services, which can last your more performing timeline. So suppose if something, your indirect spend is in terms of OPEX nature, you need to focus how can you increase the life cycle of that particular maintenance so that you can get more advantage. Cost is not that matter in terms of because the quality we are fixed. We cannot change the even HVAC or HVAC system or air system because that needs again qualification. So any change in pharmaceutical plant needs the qualification and validation again. So we only focus on the services where we can increase the life cycle. So that's how we manage the cost as well as the quality.
Sure, Gaurav. That was very good elucidation of how we walk a tight rope, ensuring that we maintain the quality at the same time not compromising on the cost. That was really insightful. Coming back to you, Girish. So I'll take a step back. So I wanted to check with you regarding the strategic planning, right? So how does your organization integrate supply chain planning into its overarching the business strategy, especially when you're dealing with different product categories and of course you are widespread across regions? So how do you integrate supply chain planning into your strategy?
See, as I was telling earlier, the complexity in terms of number of units, if I were to drill it down, we have multiple formats. Broadly, I can say there's offline format, there is online format, but in offline alone, I have maybe about 12 or 13 different business formats that is working. Say, I could call it as a Trends offline store, Trends footwear offline store, Azort, Gap, Centro, Fashion Factory. You could go to Kalanikethan. Now we have got the lingerie brands. So it's multiple brands that is available just in the fashion and lifestyle industry. And product categories include footwear, apparel, and accessories as well, right? Now, the process obviously will start with the annual operating plans given by business. It can be the short term, which is for the immediate financial year. It could be the long term, next 2 years, and then the, medium term and the long term, which is the next 5 years kind of scenario, right? Now, once we get this plan, we are talking about, say, when I talk about the vendor base, I'm talking about only 9 clusters in India, but I've got close to 1,000 vendors, okay, from where I source. I talk about stores offline, I'm talking about some 3,500 stores that I have across India, okay? And in between, we have the serving distribution centers or the warehouses, which is about 8 to 10 warehouses. So the material flow has to happen for each format from these same vendors to these warehouses and then to the stores. Okay, so that's the basic framework of the planning. Now, once I get the plan, your question is relating to integration of supply chain into the business requirement, right? So business requirement as the most important point, in terms of whether it is achieving the revenues, achieving the customer satisfaction, or achieving the SLAs that the business wants. We first try to look at what is required for that particular volume to be achieved. Then we superimpose our current capabilities in terms of network, in terms of infra, in terms of warehousing, in terms of logistics. Then figure out what is the SWOT analysis, what is required to be done, and then accordingly frame up the requirements which are prioritized. And these priorities come with the clear timelines, with the responsibility, and any milestones that needs to be tracked in person. This becomes the framework of what we do and what is called as the typical KPI for, for my team, okay, or for the supply chain team. And then, as I said, that is the framework, broader level framework that is required for the year. The fluctuation can happen in terms of season, in terms of any launches that is happening. So at that time, we need to really collaborate with all the people, go back to the drawing board, figure out what is required, what additional infra is required, and then we move accordingly. One thing to keep in mind is the logic always remains the speed of service at no increment in cost. So that's the challenge that needs to be planned out for.
And Gaurav, you want to add something to that? Like, how do you manage your business strategy?
Yeah, so in pharma and biotechnology industry, the strategies are very clear, as I given you in earlier comments. Apart from the quality and regulatory compliances, we see our internal processes should be aligned to the current best practices like CGMP or WHO guidelines or EDQM or US FDA guidelines. There we need to tweak the route of synthesis in terms of the process, in terms of manufacturing setup. There are possibilities you need to re-qualify your medicine according to the new impurities being launched. There are regular interval, these agencies give you a new kind of impurities involved into the product, where you have, even though your 10, 20 years old product may have a kind of requalification, redevelopment in terms of involvement of any one of the raw material which is now falling into their suspect raw material. So we need to qualify that change, and if possible, you need to replace that particular raw material because it may be new guidelines says you to do that. Apart from those changes in terms of process of route of synthesis, there are some strategies which we do as a risk management in terms of recall of product or in the failure of any kind of supply to the tender business. So those kind of risks we also manage in terms of the strategy.
Add a little bit on that. So in a general manufacturing environment, we work on a bill of material. There is MRP engine that runs, and you procure what you get, and you must have all the BOM available to then start the the real production. Aftermarket service little different because you actually have to have the spares available when they are required based on failure, which you have some idea, but not all. So the whole planning kind of evolves over a time where you maybe start with a reactive model. When it fails, you start to see, okay, this is failing, I should have stock. Go to a little responsive model and then start to bring in analytics and make it more predictive. And finally, you evolve into something which uses more of analytics and AI and machine learning to continuously teach your algorithms to start to make sure that there is an auto heal happening, which means that something which is getting popular is right to repair, which means that you are teaching customer or giving them firmwares or stuff which is making them self-sufficient or DIYs to do their stuff themselves and not holding back technologies and stuff that sometimes you reach out to YouTube to look for some quick fixes, jugaads as we may call it, but not anymore. So things are getting opened up, but more so coming to the point that there are softwares and stuff available that continuously get hooked to your system to check the MTBF or the mean time between failures and give you pre-alerts. Hey, you know what, your this part is reached the longevity of its end of life, so time to change and all. So it's now coming to, as I said, an auto-heal environment from a once upon a time reactive planning.
That's that brings to the next question, Girish. Like, as Yogesh was suggesting about the use of technology, etc. So with the ongoing advancements in supply chain technology, like what innovations that you find most impactful in your planning and forecasting processes now that you cater to a lot of categories and regions, right? So just if you could throw some light on that.
In the last panel, Kalyan was speaking about the direct store model that is being piloted. Now, the logic behind that direct store model is saving the time. Like say I take, say 1 week in primary, 2 days in warehouse, and then another 4 days in the, in the secondary from my warehouse to the stores. So in all, I take about 10 to 12 days, adding up cost also. The logic is, can I do this from the vendors directly to deliver to the store anywhere in India in about 5 days using multimodal kind of transport. Now, this requires the integration between the vendor. The vendor has to pack at a store level. Currently, he's packing at a warehouse level. Right, he has to pack at a store level. Then we need to integrate the likes of Shadowfax, the courier partners, to ensure that they come, they're able to pick these small parcels and then route it to pan-India. I'm talking about 3,000 stores. Okay, if I talk the combination of the entire vendor to store, I'm talking about some 6.5, 7 lakh lines that I'm supposed to route. Okay, so now this is the complexity that we have, and this is going to be first of the kind in the world as far as fashion and lifestyle is concerned. Okay, now the question is, do I have any technical backup to do this activity? Answer is no, because it has never been done before, it has never been thought before. So we need to build an integrated tech platform, which starts from the, right from the vendor. We have the platform till the vendor in terms of packing. Now I need to have the visibility of what the vendor has packed, which transporter is supposed to pick up, when is he going to pick up, if he has picked up, at what time he's going to deliver, and how much of percentage of the stocks are delivered within the required SLA that we have been talking about. So the entire end-to-end bit is a tech development that is almost complete now, which has been taken up about 3-4 months back. And that end-to-end visibility is currently available for us to pilot.
And coming to Gaurav, right? So given the importance of strong supplier relationships, what strategies do you find most effective for maintaining these partnerships to be very productive? And also in these times of supply chain volatility, how do you engage with the customers and maintain those relationships?
Yeah, it's a very important question in terms of our industry because, as I said, there are a lot of risks are involved if anything happens to the suppliers in terms of regulatory compliances. So be it apart the business assurance which we give to them in terms of annual or maybe long-term 5 years down the line. There are 3 strategies which we majorly work on before selecting them. Apart from the due diligence which we do in terms of all financial, quality, there are 2 types of quality audit which we do for their qualification before using their products. Apart from those audit and strategy, there are 3 commercial or you can say purely a sourcing strategy which we follow. One is their technical enhancement so that they are well qualified and well understand our requirement in terms of our territory so that the supply chain link actually completed with the final objective of regulatory requirements. So if medicine goes to UK market and UK government has given a kind of, just for a simple example, suppose UK government has given us some norms to qualify those medicines, and if we are using their raw material, we qualify those raw material vendors and their vendors also, because vendor is also now in the purview of those regulatory agencies. So we qualify in terms of technical knowledge, what kind of impact is going to use their product at the final patient who is going to take that medicine. That's one strategy which we work as a sourcing team with our vendors. To build the relationship, there are certain possibilities that they may get the disadvantage of competition, because there are a lot of competition in terms of geopolitical issues. If suppose I am having the vendor in India and China is supplying those raw materials at cheaper cost, and again management or anybody, most of the companies think about the costing and also they attract by there. But there are a possibility to increase your volume, there are possibility to scale up the batch, there are a possibility to increase the yield of those raw materials so that they can get the cost advantage. We work together in terms of a model where we can do what kind of yield they are getting right now to produce 1 kg of material which goes into our finished products, and how we can maximize those yield to compete the China market. Or maybe sometime similar way in terms of if we don't have the India capable vendor, we do with the Chinese vendor as well. Third strategy which we do work for is to decentralize the sourcing in terms of offshoring from the different places, because under the PLI scheme, there are possibilities, some of the policies by the government to put anti-dumping duty on the import of those raw materials. So how my dependency across the globe, so that I should not face any kind of supply disruption. So these 3 strategies which we work for, even though we, like BASF, suppose one of the chemical supplier who has 3-4 different sites in the globe where they produce the same kind of material. So we have to qualify their all 4 sites, so that if something geopolitical issue goes on the one side, we can switch immediately to those sites. So to reduce the single source or single site dependency and vendor qualification and those supply assurance, these are the strategy which we majorly follow apart from the cost and quality.
Clear, Gaurav. Yogesh, from your point of view?
Quick addition of few points, they've covered most of it. One obviously is the fact that when you are getting into a contract, you try to see that even before the contract, long gone are the days when we would call somebody a vendor or a supplier, but more moving into a partnership, call each of them as partners. When we say partners, in true essence, which means right from having to see their financial capability and extending the kind of credits to getting into terms that, we want to reward you for good ideas. And it's not simple kaizens we are talking about. It's like you as a partner for giving us this component or this stuff or this assembly, if you can innovate and get things, maybe talk about it sustainable way or little more innovative or little more better technology, if you can bring in the same supply that fits into our product, then you are eligible for some sharing of the gains that we get. We call it gain sharing contractual terms. And they are more than happy to not keep certain, SME abilities or expertise, which they may have learned elsewhere, but happy to share if they know gain out of it. And it goes on and on in terms of the fact that we may love to, as procurement people, have everything at our doorstep when we want the JIT and the VMI concepts. But fact is, everybody touch their heart and they know that when we ask that, we know we want them to keep enough stock, right? So we also know that it's not coming free. Either they would put it in the price or they would have a line in the contract which says that if it goes obsolete, who's going to pay for it? So it's good to really get those things more clear in terms of the fact that, we are not asking you too much of JIT and all, but we do expect you to align with our agile demands so that we don't lose any, product for which demand is there and just because you couldn't supply. So which means that back to back, we are sharing as much as possible real-time demands in terms of how and what we may need. There are a few things which really help in a good relationship. Skin in the game, as we know.
Thanks, Yogesh. That was really insightful. And as Gaurav has touched briefly, Girish, about the risk management and also the contingency planning per se. So how do you, what according to you that one should approach this risk management in supply chain planning?
I think risk management, to put it very simply, has a definitive answer. But how is always the challenge? Like say, I would classify the risks into a lead risk or a known risk and a lag risk, which is an unknown risk. Like say, if I am running a business in supply chain, I know that festive seasons is always going to be a problem. The hubs are going to be choked, the transporters are not going to be available, right? So this is a lead risk for me, which I know. What I need to do now is to mitigate that with proper planning. Okay, so what do I do with that? For that, I try to look at lines where I can optimize and send direct vehicles to the customer rather than sending it through an express partner. I try to find alternatives, try to see whether I can get more regional partners into the play. Or something like that, where I know there is a risk which can be preempted and I have to take enough precautions and try to align myself again. Unknown risks are something which you probably cannot do much. It's something similar to a regular firefighting that you do on a day-to-day basis. A vehicle was supposed to come, but it broke down in the middle. You can't do much about it. An engine failure or something, you cannot do much about it. Or an accident that happened, which is an unfortunate event, but you can't do much about it. So these kind of risks typically need communication. Okay, and as fast as possible kind of reaction time to it. So for me, managing risk is how you plan for the lead, and for the lag one, whenever it happens, how fast you can respond to it and how soon you can communicate it to it makes a lot of difference in the industry.
I would strongly agree with Girish to control the controllables. And to do that, while you do that, you need to have something that keeps you on toes in terms of what are the newer risks that are coming with time, and keep it in your audit checklist to try and see that you are, trying to foresee more and more evolving stuff which is happening, and you are getting ready as much as possible. And there might still be a factor of those uncontrollable which strikes.
So if I have to give my experience regarding this risk management, basically, like at least I'm currently working in an alcobev industry, so where we need to be in line with the government regulations, and its excise comes under state, and it's a major source of revenue for us. And this keeps on changing. The price regulations keep on changing, and the excise duties keep on increasing. And with the view that the governments have to have that extra revenue. So it becomes a challenge for us, at least in terms of to comply with the regulations, we need to change our labels on the product very frequently. And of course, like we have SKUs like bottles and cans. So everything needs to be changed, and we have very little time because it's a highly competitive market, and it's where the customer just walks in and takes, and he's not brand loyal. So that's where it becomes very critical that we need to manage this risk and keep everything at the back end ready, and also have a contingency plan in place so that we ensure that the product reaches to the right consumer at the right time. So having spoken about risk management, so just also wanted to touch upon the data-driven decision-making in supply chain, Girish. So how do data analytics influence your decision-making processes in your planning?
I think a lot has been spoken about data since morning. On one side, we have heard information saying that there is lack of data, and second is there is no analytics that is happening. My point is, while I agree with both of them, I feel in certain cases there is lot of data, but we do not know how to derive, and useful information out of it. We, from a Reliance point of view, we are trying to make sure that we are able to utilize the data in a right point of view. So we have got a lot of analytical tools that is coming in now, a lot of portals that has been developed, where one information itself can be seen in multiple ways. Just to give an example, if I'm looking at a stock in transit, I need to have currently, there are multiple transporters. I use maybe about 10 transporters across the country. I cannot wait for their MIS to come to me directly. So it has to be one single source of truth for me. And it cannot be one Excel dump where I am required to do a pivot table and work around it. So this data, when it has to be, if it has to be insightful to me, it has to come in a format which is a dashboard, where I can easily understand. And that this is what is getting, is being developed. I'm sure this is going to control the lot of uncontrollables that we're talking about.
So, Gaurav, so would you be able to add to that, like how you are using the data-driven to make decisions in your sourcing processes?
Thanks to the industry, because in pharma and biotechnology, it's 2-3 decades before the track and trace is mandatory for any kind of manufacturer who wanted to export to those countries. So there are a lot of agencies, there are a lot of portals who provides you the data, what kind of medicine is going to be shortage in next few months in those territories, what kind of changes is required, even though pricing of raw material, pricing of API, pricing import-export data of all those products, how much is your competitor is selling, what kind of EDQM and government agencies are going to fix their price band in their countries, because some of the European countries, governments, they decide the price because you cannot sell over that, you cannot sell lower to that. So a lot of portals, a lot of websites are available on the paid subscription you can have, and every export manufacturing company should have that. And though track and trace is mandatory for all regulated market like Europe, UK, US, but in India also, now these days at least, I could say 50% of the companies are following those track and trace. Once that 100% fully mandatory for domestic market as well, there will be a lot of shift, a lot of saving in terms of keeping those unwanted inventories. Possibly you can, like just in time, if we are talking about in medicine, so medicine company may not, if they don't have accurate data of track and trace, and if they are keeping inventory, it's actually waste of resources. Or maybe it's early keeping those inventory as inventory cost, as well as you may produce something else in that time of need. Because in COVID time, pharmaceutical industry was able to very much relate what is the value of the time, because each and every hours you have to count in terms of process. So in pharma, already there are very good and valuable data is available, which we use in our day-to-day manufacturing process and strategies.
Coming to Yogesh, so being from a technology background, so you already would have been using this data-driven decisions, etc. But like, what do you think will be the future, in the sense, like, could you predict that how it is going to change in the near future?
Not sure I can talk of future, but I can already tell you that what is available anywhere is something that we aspire to acquire or make best use of. Some of the quick few things that I can mention already are like Power BI dashboards. So those are as real time as you would like those to be. Most often used for mission critical stuff as well. Not after we fail, but before we fail, and if we can avoid a failure of a delivery or a miss of a delivery, that's what we try to do that, besides other KPIs. For process improvements, to track the entire cycle time or the process, or to see if there are non-value add stuff in the entire process, use tools like Celonis. So that's been rampantly used.
Okay, sure. That's bring like some insights which I wanted to share regarding the data-driven decision-making processes in the industry, in the alcohol industry. It's a like the lead time from the time we brew to the time it gets packaged as a beer. So it's almost like it ranges from 12 to almost 28 days. So, and at each point, it's a long process. I can't illustrate the process now, but at every point we need to understand what is the quality and what is the quantity of the brew that is available. And that is made possible currently with the usage of data analytics, basically, like usage of the technology that we know exactly at what temperature the particular brew is and what kind of quantity that we can expect in the next 20 days, etc. That is helping us to compete in the market. Apart from this manufacturing, for manufacturing we are using a connected brewer technology, and once the product is packaged, the movement from the brewery to the government warehouses, that is also being tracked. So as Gaurav was talking about track and trace, being a regulated product, it is highly important, or is highly critical that we have to have a clear track and trace for each of the product. And apart from that, like as Yogesh was suggesting, we use a lot of management information dashboards, which are on the back of Power BI. So we talk about industry, how the industry is performing, what is the market shares of our own company and other competitors, how they have been faring, and where we have the opportunities, etc. So we can't discount the data-driven decisions, at least in planning. So
just before a counter question, and it's maybe out of personal curiosity. So what takes 28 days in a factory environment? We are in a pub city, Bangalore. How much does it take in a microbrewery for the same product? Similar, I would say.
Yeah, it depends on the brand. For example, if I have to talk about a particular normal strong beer, so it takes very less time. So it depends upon the components that we use, or the raw materials that we use. So beer as a product where we use malt and rice, broken rice, apart from sugar, basically. So if you use only malt, which is the premium product, that takes around 25 to 28 days to ferment. And we also add hops to that to bring in the flavor. So all these combinations is where it depends on, these are the factors which depend upon the fermentation time. And
one of the strongest supply chain since the beginning, I think, supply chain had been the core strength of Dell. And like many companies did, like Toyota introduced TPS, does Dell have any services where they offer their supply chain know-how to the world?
Yeah, not as a service, but yes, it all started with, and some of the MBA colleges may still teach, and there is a book by the founder called Direct from Dell. And that's because this was probably the first of the initial companies when internet came in and you could design your own PC kind. Things are much different. That model still exists, but it's multi-channel approach at this point, and because one size doesn't fit all. And as we speak, maybe towards this calendar year end or beginning, we much more, and it's like constantly evolving. So there isn't something so unique that we can cling on and that will carry us for next generation. We just clocked 40 years and we are now up for next 40.
Thank you, Yogesh.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your valuable time and the insights that you've shared.